Hey folks, welcome back. Now it's time, finally, for the last installment of my extended trilogy of videos here on the mass accumulation of Free League-based RPG materials I've accumulated in the last couple of weeks. This is largely due to the Free League Midsummer Sale, where a lot of great stuff was on half price. So I used the opportunity to fill in gaps in my collection, to pick up some games that I've been interested in before but didn't really have the money to justify buying. And then I went ahead and filled in some further gaps in my collection after those purchases with some additional sale purchases at other UK-based retailers as well. So in front of us today we have the last of this excursion into Free League's vast library of games, and it's all a sci-fi flavor. So we've got some alien stuff, and we've got some basically everything there is for Coriolis the Third Horizon, which is an original sci-fi setting that was created by Free League. And I was very fascinated by the basic setting, which they've described as Arabian Nights in space, and reviews seem to bear out that that was pretty much the feeling that the game delivered. So I know virtually nothing about this. We know lots about Alien, as I've shown you bits of that before. So I'll just show you the last bits of my Alien acquisitions first, and then we'll dig into this vast pile of Coriolis material. So I'll move this to one side. There we go. Okay. And the GM screen, of course, lurking there in the background. So, first of all, for Alien, I have the Game Mother screen. So, hard to believe, but despite all this time of owning Alien material, I hadn't yet used the GM screen. But with the fact that I was going to start using these other box sets, the Colonial Marines expansion that you can see in front of you, I wanted to make sure I had an easy reference for key rules. Alien is also one of the more complicated of the Year Zero games. In that it has quite a bit of combat, as in the movies. You're fighting aliens quite a lot of the time. So it's quite handy to have some of these options and rules at my fingertips while GMing. So it comes with the typical advertising sheet here. Deluxe Game Mother screen in landscape format for the official Alien role-playing game. It features Martin Grip's art on the outside and a host of useful tables and important information on the inside, while keeping the GM's plans hidden from the eyes of inquisitive players. There we go. As for the screen itself, so once again, we are in landscape format, which is Free League's preferred way of going about these things. And we have a very stark and dark looking piece of art on the outside. We see the menacing silhouette of the back of a xenomorph, culminating in his horrible visage here in the center panel, along with the logo of the game itself, which looks really, really cool. And as he is chomping into something, or perhaps being hit by something, I think he's chomping something, but anyway, we can see flying the bits of that kind of green acidic blood the aliens have shooting across the remainder of the screen here. So very evocative, very in space, no one hears you scream kind of vibes. Gotta say, it looks fantastic. As usual, the material itself is really great, high quality, 3mm thick hardback book cover material, essentially. On the inside, we've got our tables galore for play. So we have a table on measuring time, we have modifiers for sneak attacks and ambushes, modifiers for stealth, difficulty modifiers ranging from trivial to formidable, which is also handy for the GM. We have a complete list of slow actions that can be taken during combat and fast actions. And you can see there are quite a few options in Alien compared to the other games where combat is not as much of a feature, so that's a really handy sort of summary of the two different types of actions you can take on a turn. Then we have the massive critical injuries table, which is very important, which ranges from mere cases of being winded or stunned, all the way down to 44 and above where things start becoming fatal, meaning that you have to be stabilized right away by somebody, or you will die over the time limit listed. So if you get a punctured lung with a 44, you'll die in a day. In the meantime, you'll have stamina and mobility -2, and the healing time without assistance would be, in that case, D6 days. So it gives you all the info you need about each crit, all the way up to pierced head, crushed skull, impaled heart, where you just immediately die, disemboweled as well, you immediately die. Alien is a rough game, the aliens themselves are very tough, very hard to defeat, so you don't want to be isolated against them in most cases. But Colonial Marines have a better shot than most, and we'll see why in the sourcebook. Then we have the fantastic panic roll table. So when you are under stress and you roll some ones on your stress dice, then you'll need to do a panic roll, and this table gives you that right at your fingertips. You don't need to flip through the book to find it. We also have modifiers for ranged fire in combat. So ranging from +2 for an aim shot, -3 or +3 at engaged range, depending on the weapon in and the circumstances, all the way up to modifiers for large and small, long range, extreme range, dim light, or darkness. Description of the range categories. So just general descriptions of the range bands if you like. The maps tend to mark these out for you, which is extra helpful. And then finally, the types of cover. So shrubbery gives you 2 armor, furniture 3, door 4, inner bulkhead 5, outer bulkhead 6, armored bulkhead 7+. So there you go. So yeah, a lot of this is basically for the combat rules, as you can see, because there's a big part of Alien panicking, freaking out, and then dying are a big part of what happens in this game. So it's a really good selection of tables that you need as a GM. So I'm really happy to see that. And I love the external artwork. I mean, look at that. That's very imposing. Definitely will give your players at the table a foreboding sense of what's to come. Then we have the wonderful Colonial Marines Operations Manual. I've been really looking forward to this. So as we saw the other day, I also picked up the other 2 remaining box sets for Alien that I didn't have. They were direct follow-ons from the story in the starter box set. And the second of those actually has Colonial Marines-based characters. But this book includes a whole lot more on that aspect of play. So as we can see, Alien RPG Colonial Marines Operation Manual is a complete campaign module for the award-winning official Alien role-playing game, giving you all the tools you need to run the full open-world campaign as the iconic Colonial Marines. This massive 352-page book includes history and organization of the USCMC, creating Marines, so expanded character creation rules for grunts of all kinds, weapons and vehicles with new gear gloriously illustrated, the Frontier War, so the framework and backstory for a Colonial Marines campaign, factions on the frontier, the powers that be and their dark agendas, Marine missions, so 6 thrilling missions for Marines playable in any order, and then the end game, the showdown against a deadly enemy finally revealed. Of course, you need the core rule book. With this is not a standalone game. This is an expansion of what is available to you in the core rulebook, such as allowing you to create Colonial Marines characters and all this new tech and so forth. So again, this is just a first impressions video, so we won't look through things in great amount of detail at this point. I haven't had the ability to use these kind of characters in play just yet. But when I do, through the second box set and maybe through an extended campaign of Marines to follow, I will report back. The end papers, we have a lovely map here of the different extents, of the different galactic empires that we were worrying about in the Alien universe. So we have the Union of Progressive Peoples here in red, the Three World Empire or Anglo-Japanese arm in green. We have the Independent Core Systems colonies in yellow here, a few scattered bits over here. We have the United Americas, which are kind of swirling around all the outside here, and extending into the UPP in different parts here. And there's little bits of the World Empire on the outside fringes here as well, you'll notice, along down here as well. And then we have the frontiers, so these are the purple bits all around the edges where we don't know what's going on. Either they're worlds they are yet to be colonized or yet to be explored. So plenty of rich environs to get involved in a Colonial Marines campaign. We got the lovely, now notable style of table of contents for the Alien game with these sort of heading illustrations. First chapter is about Welcome to the Corps, so the basics of Marine Corps life. Then we have a historical chapter in number 2. Chapter 3 is Organization 36. So this is the United States Colonial Marine Corps. Then we talk about some other branches, other organizations within the UA, Forces of the Three World Empire, ICSC and corporate armed forces, and the UPP Armed Collective. So that's the Union of Progressive Peoples. Then we have a chapter wholly dedicated to making Marine characters. Then you have an enormous selection of gear. You'll notice going from page 66 all the way to 101. Then we start with the Marine campaign. So some additional procedures for combat, and using your squad effectively, how combat logistics and drop ships and landing teams work, and different types of missions you'll encounter as a Marine. So assault, recon, defense, sabotage and raid, all that kind of stuff. And then what you can do on your downtime as well. Then we have some key systems and military bases, some black projects going on. So Soldier Program, Project Berserker, Project Life Force, the Dark Star Program, Xenomorph XX121, and aberrant types thereof. Then we have some history of the Frontier War, and then we get into the missions. So we have a series of 6 missions, and then a big finale and aftermath to close out the book. So there's a heck of a lot of stuff in here. As always, we've got beautiful 2-pager spreads here to open up each chapter. So I'm going to just merrily skip through a lot of this stuff. Just give you a sense of the vibe of the book. I've heard some people mention that there's a little bit less of the sort of patented style of beautiful artwork that Free League often presents in their Alien books in this particular book. However, they do have a separate art book for Colonial Marines, which is like 17 pages of art. So I wonder if that was kind of a cost thing, if they needed to get the page count below a certain size, and they found that they'd rather have more game content and leave some of the artwork for elsewhere, or if it's, I don't even know what's in that PDF, to be perfectly honest with you. But for me, there's enough artwork in here to spice things up alongside the, the layout in Alien is not too cramped. Each page tends to give you plenty of space to breathe. There's not too much to read on any given page. And you do have a lot of art to break up each chapter. Now, as the chapters get longer, I don't know, maybe people wanted more illustrations of gear and stuff like that when we get to that point. But here we're getting plenty of illustrations about things like command insignia, different levels of officer and their insignia, from hospital corpsman to corporal, different ranks of pilots, gunnery sergeants, sergeant, major battalion, mastery gunnery sergeant, squads, fire teams, specialty fire teams, assault teams, CBRN teams. So these are chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear defense fire teams. Are called in to clean up a spill, deactivate a dirty bomb, contain an outbreak, or establish and reinforce quarantine procedures. That sounds quite useful, potentially, if there is a breakout of certain types of xenomorphs, I should say. Then it gives you an outline of who you would expect to see in these kind of teams, recon teams, assault teams, or CBRN teams. Then some of what we find in the other branches. So we have the United Americas Allied Command, we have the Aerospace Force, the Aerospace Warfare Service with dropships, fightercraft, and intra- and exosystem support. We have the Canadian Colonial Armed Forces, the CCAF. They're the sea and ground pounders of the EUAAC, operating in any environment on the surface of a planet or moon. We have the Latin American Colonial Navy, LACN, the most capable navy in civilized space. They're recently augmented and expanded to absorb the United States Navy. So they have top-of-the-line ships and often works in tandem with Marine Space Force Eridani. Wow, interesting. Then we have the Outer Rim Defense Fleet. So they are for power protection, massive deterrence, space lift, and interstellar warfare. So they were formed and is maintained by the American Outer Rim colonies. Just as its name implies, the ORDF patrols and protects the Outer Rim territories. As the LACN bases in the Outer Rim have proved successful and reliable, the usefulness of the ORDF had recently come into question, a question that has now been nullified by the outbreak of the Frontier War, which we'll see in a later chapter. And we have yet more organizations, the Colonial Marshal Bureau, so therefore law enforcement, border patrol, and homeworld security, Federal Bureau of Investigation, or FBI. So they are the internal intelligence and security services of the United Americas, and they haven't changed much in the last 2 centuries, save to increase their influence from the U.S. to encompass all UA colonies. Then we have the United American Colonial Guard, the Reserve Force for Civic Action and Disaster Relief, the Colonial Coast Guard, Interstellar Customs and Trade Regulation, Migrant Interdiction, Search and Rescue, and the forces of the Three World Empire. Now we're getting into the opposing empires here. So we have the Royal Marine Commandos, so they're an expeditionary force, and an interstellar strike force. We have the Imperial Armed Space Forces, an all-purpose armed aerospace and fleet force of the Three World Empire. They also serve as system guards, protecting prestigious worlds of the 3WE, and they see action along the ICSC border of New Eden sector, preventing smugglers from breaking through the blockade. We have corporate forces as well, the Weyland-Yutani Commandos, sometimes called guerrillas by Colonial Marines because of the APE suits they wear. Weyland-Yutani Commandos are the cream of the corporate crop. There you go. They also have the Colonial Space Consortium Private Military Contractors, the CSCPMC. They're private organizations that provide security services or military training for independent courses and colonies. They're a mixed bag of elite and novice mercenaries who often don't work well with the units. Then we have the UPP Armed Collective, so they're the Socialist Empire of the Stars, the alien equivalent of the Soviet Union. We have the UPPA, the Union of Progressive People's Army, so they're for surface warfare, massive deterrence, planetary security and defense, and interplanetary assault. So upon reaching adulthood, every Union citizen has to serve in the UPPA for 5 years, meaning most of the army is composed of regular people doing their duty and nothing more. So they're adequately trained but easily convinced to surrender when their lives are in serious danger. We have the Space Operating Forces for interstellar warfare, power projection, surface dominance, etc. They specialize in zero-G combat and are the Union's answer to the USCMC. They're a first response group to any aggression against a UPP allied colony. They maintain its own Starfleet and act as a UPP vanguard during any invasion or annexation the Union might execute. Also, the Ministry of Space Security. They have spies situated throughout the UA and ICSC, smuggling out weapon plans and vehicle designs. They send liaisons to disgruntled 3WE and UA colony worlds to convince them to defect to the Union. They perform unorthodox psychological and biological experiments for the good of the people, but often at some of the people's expense. Interesting. So lots of interesting campaign seeds right there, just in learning about a little bit what the opposition is about. Now we get into the new character creation stuff. So the basics, you're going to pick your military operational specialty. So we have the commander, for example. Then you pick your attributes, skills, and talents. So amongst the occupational specialties, we have FV Marines. So they are the crew of an armored fighting vehicle. Key attribute ability, skills, piloting, range combat, talents, all-terrain driver, banter, heavy weapons, overkill, and pass the limit. We have Assault Marine Breacher. So they're combat specialists for both major assaults and urban pacification. For riot control and crowd control, you carry stun batons, riot shields, and use rubber U1 ammo to subdue targets. You can also use a big fucking rocket launcher to knock on doors. Okay. Key attribute strength, skills, range combat, close combat. They're good at banter, subdue, overkill, pass the limit, and weapon specialist, M5 RPG. Rocket propelled grenade, for those who don't know. And we have the automated rifleman or smart gunner. So it takes muscle to withstand the kickback of the smart gun servo mount. So they're tough and dedicated to your role as an ass kicker and battlefield file support. You have a key attribute of strength, skills of range combat and stamina, talents, banter, machine gunner, overkill, pass the limit, weapon specialist in smart gun. You have contact marine. This is the guy who is the tech guy. So you know about remote-driven dropships, robot sentry guns, computer-controlled bombs, and worse. You're the squad's tech spec, skilled with computer systems, radios, diagnostics, and hacking devices. They're essential to any squad and play a significant role in assault, marine, and CBRN specialist fire teams. Their key attribute is wits, and their key skills are comtech and observation, and their talents can be bypass, banter, overkill, pass the limit, and remote. We've got CBRN specialists. They're trained to assess, contain, and quarantine chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear threats. Part field scientist, part rifleman, you're all marine. Key attribute, again, is wits. Skills include operation heavy machinery. Skills, banter, inquisitive, nerves of steel, overkill, and weapon specialist in the incinerator. So that's a flamethrower, which is pretty damn cool. You can be a dedicated marksman. You're a sniper. You wear camouflage ghillie suit, blend into the background, and pick off enemy soldiers at long range with your M42A scope rifle. Most platoons employ one or two dedicated marksmen and their spotters. So here, a key attribute is agility. Your skills are in range combat and observation. And your talents would be banter, killer, overkill, pass the limit, and weapon specialist in the scope rifle. Dropship crew chief, the backseat crewman of a dropship or gunship. Ground, you carry out maintenance, run pre-flight checks, and handle loading and unloading. In flight, you provide sensor and navigational data to the pilot and operate the weapon systems. Pilot, make the ship fly, but you make it go boom. So your key attribute is strength. You have skills in comtech and heavy machinery. And talents can be banter, fast reflexes, heavy weapons, overkill, and pass the limit. Be an hospital corpsman. So you're still a rifleman, but you're one of the platoon's combat medics, able to provide life-saving first aid and even emergency battlefield surgery. Your squad tends to have your back because they know they'll need you to patch them up when the shit starts flying. Their key attribute is empathy. They love medical aid and observation as skills, as talents, banter, bodyguard, field surgeon, hug the dirt, and pass the limit. Then we have the scout, the forward observer. They look ahead to silently take out enemies and secure a vantage point to set up shots for either artillery or a dedicated marksman. Use silence, motion detectors, full spectrum scopes, ghillie suits, and suppressed pups to coordinate strikes for either your sniper or an airstrike. So we're back to wits again as a key attribute. Observation and mobility as key skills. Talents are banter, watchful, stealthy, remote, and hug the dirt. Then finally we have the rifleman. You're always on the front line, walking point and looking out for ambushes and traps. The uneducated say you're just a grunt, but you're much more than that. Part scout and part assault trooper. You're the core of the Colonial Marines close combat forces. Their key attribute is agility, with skills in survival and mobility, talents in banter, overkill, pass the limit, stealthy, and watchful. There we go. So we also have tables of field events. So Marines have formative experiences that impact their lives or career. For a normal enlisted Marine, just roll once on table A. For a non-commissioned officer, also roll for a second field event on table B. For pilots and crew chiefs, instead roll on table C. Okay. Reroll if you roll the same event as another player. Skills and attributes can never go above 5 as a result of a field event. If you roll an event that would cause that to happen, re-roll. Interesting. Okay, so we have some events that can happen to you as an enlisted officer, as an NCO, or event table C for pilots and crew chiefs. That's cool. So you get a little bit of kind of life path aspect of, say, Traveler in there with this. Then we've got some new talents. So these are only available to Colonial Marines. You can be an all-terrain driver. You have experience driving all-terrain vehicles over rough terrain while minimizing damage to the vehicle. You get +2 modification to piloting when driving a wheeled or tracked vehicle built for off-road travel. You have bypass. You have experience jury-rigging toolkits and using diagnostic devices to hack doors. You gain a +2 modification to the comtech skill when attempting to unlock a locked entryway. Well, that's useful. Heavy weapons. The military uses a variety of heavy weapons, from plasma guns to tactical missiles and tank guns. You get a +2 mod to range combat when firing such weapons, and +2 to heavy machinery when attempting to unjam or fix a heavy weapon. We have Hug the Dirt, so you can maximize cover from incoming range attacks when you're down on the ground, forcing an attacker to use the ranged weapon at medium range or more to take a -2 modification. Going prone does not require an action, but you can only do it on your own turn. Getting up is a fast action. This talent can be combined with the effects of cover. Very good. Finally, we have remote. You're qualified to set up, control, and repair remote sentry guns and other remotely controlled battlefield vehicles, and to pilot remote vehicles and pups. Receive +2 to Comtech rolls to carry out these tasks. The correct equipment is needed in all cases. Of course, a portable uplink terminal, for example, is needed to remote pilot a dropship, evac fighter, or APC. So now we're almost ready, but we need to determine their rank. The player characters decide their own fate. Rank is often associated with a Marine's role or position within the platoon. Simply choose the rank that fits your MOS and position from the table to the right. So the personal stuff, of course, you'll need a name as well as a description of their appearance, a personal agenda, a signature item, and a buddy and a rival. You can do that as described in the core rulebook. A starting gear for a fresh Marine includes 3 types of gear: basic gear, specialty gear, and bonus gear. All items listed below are included in the gear chapter of this book or in the core rulebook. Some PCs may find they acquire more gear than they can carry. That's not a problem. Before each mission, choose what you're going to take and leave the rest cluttering up your bunk back at base. Perfect. Basic gear includes stuff like military ID tags. We have battle dress utilities, helmets, individual Marine packs, including a personal med kit, personnel armor with built-in data transmitter, shoulder lamps. Finally, each PC chooses 1 item each from list A and B below. So that's single flares, combat knives, folding winches, electronic tools, handcuffs, etc. Or a pistol, electroshock hand grenades, harpoon grappling gun, incinerator unit, 4 spare grenades, mechanical hunting torch, specialty gear, depending on your MOS. So, if you're an AFV, you get a pulse rifle and electronic tools. If you're an assault Marine, you get a whole bunch of stuff, including a pulse rifle, stun baton, etc. So each of those MOS we just went through gets a bunch of cool new weaponry to match their specialization, basically. And the pilot gains stuff like life vests, compression suits, survival kits, all that sort of stuff. So there you go. Pretty easy extension of the basic character creation system in Alien. Just got a few more talents. We got new aspects, including the ability to acquire a bunch more deadly gear and very different pathways through the service that could possibly happen, along with the life events in the table that can add some uncertainty to your rolls when you're creating your character, which I like very much. We've got a very scary picture here where this guy doesn't know what is grimly drooling behind him. And then we get into gear. Excellent. Another atmospheric 2-pager art. So again, I'll go through this fairly quickly. We can see we've got types of pistols, including electrostatic weapons that have additional effects. We have rifles, which can detonate, pulse assault rifles that are full auto. Got pulse action suit guns with armor piercing full auto included in the CCC-5 compression suit. Got automatic assault rifles, armor piercing assault rifles with an incinerator unit included, and then the underbarrel incinerator unit for the assault rifle. And then we got some images here of the Norcom AK-4047. Yeah, looks like they're all illustrated, in fact. And then we got some details on each of those heavy weapons. Got repeat grenade launchers, RPGs, light energy weapons, pig phased plasma infantry gun. Okay. Independently targeting particle beam phalanx. Wow. Alright, so these are big fellas. We've got the repeating grenade launcher. Damage varies. Can fire different grenade types. We've got the M5A3 grenade launcher. Damage 5. Single shot armor piercing. Range up to extreme. The RPG launches rockets as well, of course. We have the Wayland 72A light energy weapon, which does 6 damage and is armor piercing, but reduced by range. We have the phased plasma infantry gun, so 6 damage as well, but no bonus. Armor piercing, again, reduced by distance from the target. Then we have the independently targeting particle beam phalanx. Armor piercing, full auto, or focused attack with increased damage and range. Wow, so they have damage can be 4 or 7, depending on range, long, or extreme. And we have a picture of an RPG launcher over here as well. Then we have different types of ammunition. There's different types of grenades, flares, baton rounds, buckshot canisters, fire bombs, assault breaching charges, claymore mines, anti-vehicle mines. And table of their effects. So we've got HETV grenades with blast 9. Then we've got flares, baton rounds, and buckshot canisters. Then we have the fire bombs with fire 12. Yikes. The claymore mine and assault breaching charges with blast 9. And the mines are triggered at short range. Observation is required to spot. And the anti-vehicle mine is triggered at engage range. Against this, the immediate target damage is increased by 2 and is armor piercing, and it's blast 12. So that can punch through the armor of even tough vehicles. Then we have chemical weapons, which have been banned on Earth, but they're fair game on extrasolar colonies. Great. So we have nerve agents. Okay. Wow. So there are 2 different types of nerve agents, I guess. Well, there's a nerve agent, and then we have another type of gas. So deadly nerve gas is lasting results on an enemy and anyone else unlucky enough to be within its range. A single canister will affect everything within one zone. Roll a stress die at the start of each round. On a success, the gas dissipates. In a contaminated zone, all humans without a hazmat suit must make a stamina roll with a -3 modifier each round before performing any actions. Failure means suffering 1 point of damage, taking stress level +1, and again in each following round, even if the victim leaves the contaminated zone. If the victim is broken while suffering the effects of a nerve agent, they must make a death roll every round. Yikes. The only way to save the victim's life at this point is a hard -2 medical aid roll. Wow, that's hardcore. Then we have QTC, or quintracetylene explosive accelerant. It's a volatile chemical, usually found in liquid form. Similar to 20th century napalm, it's often mixed with a gelling agent used to firebomb an area containing enemy forces, dangerous indigenous life forms, hint hint, or infectious disease. Yeah, that can do fire 15 in terms of damage. Costs $200 a liter. It comes in 200-liter drums. Yeah, so you have to be careful with this stuff because it can destroy an awful lot of things and do an awful lot of fire damage. And then we have suits and armor. So we have standard stuff, battle dress uniforms, dog tags, ghillie suits, and the standard jungle boots, thermal boots, and performance platypus fins for different types of environments. So fins, obviously, if you need to swim. Thermal boots to resist cold. Ghillie suits to grant bonuses to mobility against being detected, and dog tags contain the owner's personal medical data. Protective gear, we have life vests, cold weather parkas, military-grade hazmat suits, which all do what you would expect, and then the ultra-diffusive environmental poncho can make a Marine nearly invisible in the rain, stealth +2 in wet environments. Often worn by CBRN specialists in the field, poncho offers a +2 stamina bonus to resist chemical and biological contaminants as long as no damage has pierced it. Then we have the G suit, which is standard issued to starfighter pilots. Pressure plates within the legs regulate blood flow and basically helps pilots to resist the effects of high G forces. Then we have body armor, ballistic helmets, Kevlar riot vests, plasteel riot shields, combat armor, and CCC-5 combat compression suits. Each of them have some additional powers. Armor rating is nil for the helmet, but it includes part of the M3 personal armor and has a tactical camera. Kevlar riot vest has an armor rating of 4 with a built-in comm unit. The Armat CM4 plasteel riot shield has an armor rating of 5, gives cover after a slow action to raise the shield. Combat armor gives you an armor of 6, but also a weight of 2. It has a built-in comm unit and tactical camera. And the CCC-5 combat compression suit gives you an armor rating of 2, air supply, which is very useful in hostile atmospheres, of course. It gives you observation -1 and has an AK-104 attached. Then we have some miscellaneous equipment, personal shades, so useful for solar radiation, atomic blasts, targeting lasers, and so forth. We have CBRN detection kits for detecting radiological and nuclear detection kits. So Geiger counters, basically. Individual marine packs with med kits. Supply rating 4 worth of food and water. We have high beam shoulder lamps, muzzle suppressors, entrenching spade, basically using it as a close combat weapon or using it to make a makeshift cooking pan for field grub or dig a creature out of its hole. We've got folding winches, climbing rope, full spectrum spotter scopes, personal data transmitter and locator tube set, and parafoil, a rigid delta-shaped airfoil, collapses down enough to fold up and tuck in a rucksack. Used in stealth drops to silently glide into enemy territory. Very cool. Then we got some new vehicles. We got the Armored Personnel Carrier, the M577 APC, top speed 155 kph, 9.2 millimeters in length. It includes phased plasma pulse cannon turret and 20mm Gatling gun turret. And we have the M579 Air Defense APC, which is a bit shorter, but focuses instead on a 20mm Gatling gun turret and 4 Hellcat light missiles to defend against air attack. So that's described in a bit more detail below. Then we have the Mikoyan Liu Ox Series HAMP V 6x6 heavy armored multipurpose vehicle. That's a mouthful. Quite imposing with huge tires. Top speed is only 68 kph. Length 16.1 meters, so it's rather large. 3x 20mm Gatling gun turrets, phased plasma pulse cannon turret, and a multi-directional flame unit. Wow. Then we have the Hover Tread light infantry vehicle, so it can travel 82 kph on the ground, 50 in the air. So it can hover slightly above the ground. Includes a long-range particle cannon, smart gun turret, and dual EMP blaster. Wow. XT-37 Stinger 4x4 fast attack vehicle. This guy here can go 220 kilometers an hour. That's pretty impressive. It's only 4.1 meters long, so it's fairly tight quarters. But it does carry a 50mm double-barreled cannon and 4x Hellcat light missiles. And then we have a summary table of the motorized infantry vehicles. So the number of passengers each of these can hold, their maneuverability, respectively, their speed ratings, hull, armor, and cost. All very useful. Now, armored vehicles, we have the Jackson medium tank with 85mm rifle cannon, 20mm Gatling gun. We have the Ridgeway heavy tank with 115mm rifled cannon, 60mm mortar, and 20 kilowatt phase plasma point defense gun. And here we have the heavy tank. Very, very scary looking. Definitely looks prepared to blast anything in its way. We have a summary table. They have a huge amount of armor. But note that the armor is 12, so the anti-vehicle mines will still be able to punch through. Then we have artillery support, so giant guns on treads, basically. The self-propelled artillery with a top speed of 60 kilometers an hour, 11.1 meters in length, 41 caliber 158 millimeter cannon, and small laser defense turret, I guess for close-in defense when all else fails. The Celestial Defense Armory gun, 54.1 meters long. It's a heavy rail gun, 3x small laser defense turrets, and a targeting AI, giving it range combat 8. Yikes. Multiple launch rocket system, MLRS. Those of you following the current Ukraine conflict will have surely seen these in action. Here they go 60 kilometers an hour, are 7.2 meters long. They have 8x 250 millimeter Thunderbolt, Rainmaker, or Stormbringer rockets. So we've got some summary stats for those. Then we have assault craft. So these are aircraft, basically. We have a vertical takeoff and landing strike ship with 25 millimeter Gatling guns and 2x sightline beam turrets. We've got the VTOL dropship Cheyenne UD-4L, top speed Mach 9, holy moly, 25 millimeter Gatling gun, 150 millimeter Banshee 70 unguided rockets, 7x AGM-220C Hellhound 2 tactical missiles, 3x AIM-90E headlock air-to-air missiles. And then there's some variants of this as well. So there's a civilian model which has no armament. We have the Sky Crane, which has lower top speed as well, and changes up the armament. So there's no air-to-air missiles on this one. Then we have a gunship, which has even more stuff to blow people up, a lot more tactical missiles, and the DS-3 Tippiter. So UPP uses this, it's got a faster speed of Mach 10, but much less in the way of armaments. It's just got air-to-air missile launchers and 25mm Gatling guns. So you'd want those for air superiority, I suppose. And then we have the Crocodile series armored attack dropship. So this is the UPP's answer to the Cheyenne. They go Mach 8, 33.2 meters long, 25mm Gatling gun, 12x armor, medium air-to-air missiles, UPP anti-personnel missile pod, 12x wing-mounted UPP Karakurt and heavy anti-tank missiles. Wow, okay. Whew, they're getting more and more expensive as we go. Aerospace fighters, these guys can go ridiculous speeds, Mach 18. They've got air-to-air missile launchers and Gatling cannons. We've got the Alpha Tech Aerospace Superiority Trans-Atmospheric Fighter. They only go Mach 15, however, so the UPP Interceptor is faster, but these guys have more weapons, so that kind of makes for an interesting dynamic. And then we have a summary of all the different vehicle weapons. So the damage they do, their bonuses, possible ranges and costs, including all the various different types of vehicles, heavy weapons, and so on. The railgun does 15 damage against vehicles and 5 against starships. So that's why that gigantic railgun artillery is so enormous and expensive. It costs $22 million for a railgun. So if you want to defend a colony and against space attack, you'll need one of those, I guess. Then we get to spacecraft. Cool, we have some information about the registry prefixes you might use. Got service skiffs, so these are smaller crafts. Got sensor decoys, manipulator arms. They can be upgraded to have stealth and overpowered thrusters. Got the Mantis multi-mission transport. Bonneville class attack transport, the Kremlin-class Hunter Destroyer, Frigate Buster EMP missiles. This is a unique ship armament not included in the core rulebook. Requires a size 3 hardpoint, has a +1 bonus, base damage 5 at extreme range. As a special effect, if an EMP missile causes major component damage, it will automatically cripple the engine, in addition to the randomly rolled effect. The EMP missile launcher costs $50 million, and each missile costs $600,000. Wow, okay. They got some wonderful 2-page spreads here of some of these new ships. So we've got the multi-mission transport Mantis with all the details you need. We've got the Kremlin-class Hunter Destroyer, which looks totally different. I love that. Very different style of approach taken here. Focus more on particle beams, on orbital mines. True capacity of 200. Then we have the USCMC Bougainville, $265 million in cost. FTL rating 6. So it's got some missiles, heavy railguns, tactical nukes, and railgun turrets. You can boost the drives, sensors, and planetfall capacity. Whew, that's a lot of gear. Then we have the Marine campaign. So they give you a framework for setting up a campaign, how to structure your unit, if you're a battalion landing team, or a dropship squadron, or a combat logistics battalion. They give you some NPCs that you can throw in to help these kind of groups run together. Then we have an example assault frigate with deck plans, which is fantastic. So you've got diagram of the launch hangar, the mess and cryogenic compartment, so it's where you'll be in cryo sleep, ready prep food station modules, and the staging area where you'll have your power loader bay, dropship launch hangar, and so forth, and a briefing room, and personnel lockers for your personal tchotchkes. Yeah, and then they talk about in detail each of those areas inside the ship. Then what it's like inside the squad, again with some example Marines for you to look at. Yeah, so while there is a chain of command, they recommend that in gameplay you kind of forget that and let the players decide their own fate. The sergeant simply acts as a relay between the platoon commander and the rest of the PCs. Once the mission is underway, it is they who decide what the squad does, where it goes, and how it tackles problems. There's no leader sat at the role-playing table. All of the players have an equal say in what happens, just like any other RPG. So we can pretend that the officer in command came up with the ruse, or just assume that she goes along with the squad. In the end, all that matters is that the players as a squad decide themselves what they're going to do. So they don't want somebody with basically another player to pull rank on another, which would cause potential friction at the table. I think that makes a lot of sense. You can also create Colonial Marine characters using the rules in Chapter 4 and control NPC Marines in the section. No matter what the rank, the players are the ones calling the shots and making decisions, and the NPCs will go along with the squad and quietly do so. No one wants to be ordered around by an NPC, by the way. By having control of the squad this way, the players represent a single fighting unit. The second squad will be controlled by you as GM and typically serve as a secondary or auxiliary function during a scenario. So again, encouraging you to get the players deep into the heart of the action. If you have a second squadron of NPCs, they should be there for support or spotting or something like that. Then they give you some tips on what to do in case of player casualties, and a whole bunch of NPC players might come in useful, like Riflemen, Comtech Marines, AFE Marines, Marine Sergeant, generic Riflemen. Then we've got some additions to combat procedures, so cross-country movement, outdoor zones, setting ambushes, being ambushed, calling in fire support, which has some modifiers to it. And then we have some missions. So Colonial Marines campaign is based on a series of missions with downtime in between. 7 fleshed out missions are included in Chapter 10, but you can also add other missions to the campaign using the campaign play rules in Chapter 12 of the core rulebook. This section describes the mission types listed on page 345 in more detail. You can also incorporate elements from the backstory of the Frontier War into these generic missions to tie things together. So here we have a generator if you just want to pick a type of mission at random. A description of each of those types of missions and what the Marines will need to do. Then complications that may occur during those missions, and what the Marines can do during downtime, and what kind of events can happen to a squad during downtime. Personal downtime events, company cornbread. So here's an actual recipe for company cornbread that you can bake for your table to give them the atmosphere of eating the crappy kind of food you would get as a Marine on the front line. That's really cool. Then we get into systems and bases. So we have a summary table of the territory, the sector within each one, and the systems within that sector, and then the planets and moons within those specific systems that are of importance. So again, there'll be a lot of detail here that we don't really need. I talked way too much already about gear. This goes into detail on all the various colonies and bases that you need to know about as a Marine potentially, or where you could set up missions. Oh, there's also some details about Arcturians. So these are mentioned in, I believe, Aliens, in a sort of passing mention between discussions in the Marines on the dropship, but they've been given some detail here. And that's kind of cool. They have stats as well, and there's different kinds of attacks they can do, including echolocation, ultrasonic challenge, pummel attack, not the face, so trying to tear your nose off, basically, rend you limb from limb, or a savage bite. Doesn't sound great. Yeah, then we have details on other systems. Crestus Garrison, Planet Chibi. Oh, that's a beautiful picture there, by the way, with this kind of symmetrical 9-piece space installation floating over what looks to be a gas giant with a small moon there. Garrison System Alpha, Beta, and Gamma. Garrison System Delta, Upsilon. Move along, the system is need to know only, and you do not need to know. Okay, so it's a black project site system. It's a blank slate for you as a game mother to scribble on, an opportunity for you to create a massive military secret catered to your specific campaign. Oh, I love that. In truth, only you know what's hidden here. That's cool. Then we have the frontier regions, so the borderline regions, Bannon's World, the GJ 2005 system, Transept, various other places, Pandora, also the 7th, New SETI system, Misery Station. Doesn't sound great. Being sent to Misery is the 22nd century equivalent of being sent to Siberia. Cause too many problems with either command, and you can be sure you'll be finishing out your tour either here or on Skyfire Down. Wow. Ooh, and then we got Black Projects, and look at all the xenomorphs here. Fantastic. Got the Artificial Womb Soldier program. So they're human troops that come from a military artificial womb, a program designed to supplant the draft and bolster the ranks of the USCMC in times of war. Due to the program's controversial nature, information about it is on a need-to-know basis. So basically, they would grow artificial Marines in artificial wombs and raise them from the moment of birth to be deadly Marine fighters. The problem is it doesn't really save a lot of time. It still takes 18 years to create a viable soldier. They still have to grow up basically. They're less cost-effective, but they are very lethal, and they own the battlefield. Notable personnel include various names here. With your consent, players can create artificial bloom soldier PCs. They're created as Colonial Marines, but can have strength up to 7, but never more than 3 in wits and empathy. Their first career talent must be overkill. Cool. So they can have massive strength from all those years of training, but they are limited in their wits and empathy due to their disposition, which would encourage dehumanization of the enemy. So that would reduce your empathy by any measure. And we have an example one here as well. And you can see he's got a strength 6. Huge. Then we have Project Berserker, so a blend of mechanized armor and biological components. Weaponized and enclosed exosuit designed by the Hyperdyne Corporation as a countermeasure to Project Life Force. All right, so it's a combination of cybernetics and pharmaceuticals on highly unstable and aggressive subjects to turn them into literal killing machines. Great. Oh God, look at that. So it includes a 25mm Gatling gun, M240 incinerator unit, stun baton, U1 M40 grenade launcher, U4 repeating grenade launcher with QTC, so that means napalm, firebomb ammunition, and a grasping claw for close combat. They are apparently field testing a dozen exosuits, but they're yet to be utilized outside of a controlled scenario. Then we have Project Life Force, which is a covert bioweapons program to alter the genetic code of P. pripotens, the xenomorph designation XX121, in order to weaponize it for deployment on enemy worlds. So we saw this in the films with Weyland Yutani, etc., trying to collect samples of xenomorph eggs and so forth to potentially use them as bioweapons, and that, of course, turned into a disaster at various different times. Though I like the conclusion here, while the project is not without risks, the overwhelming exploitative potential of the species is clear. There you go. Then we have the Dark Star program. So the UPP's Alien Bioweapons Development Program in the Borderline region. So they're also using aliens as a basis. So they were able to use the Neomorph's high metabolic rate, makes it a more viable bioweapon than unaltered Xenomorph XX121 specimens. It leaves behind a booby-trap battlefield as neomorphic egg sacs begin growing on the creature's decomposing corpse. Disrupting these bulbous pods can start the whole process anew, so extra care must be taken during cleanup. Yeah, I should say so. So the Dark Star program is behind in its development. If there are no results soon, the Union will do what the USC-MC Project Life Force is trying to avoid, simply using unaltered and therefore uncontrollable Xenomorph XX121 soldiers on their enemies. That would be a very bad idea. And then we have the Xenomorph XX121 aberrant types. So they have all the same special abilities as a healthy Xenomorph XX121 type, along with whatever's listed here. So we have the Biodrone Xenomorph XX121B, Speed 2, Health 6, Mobility 8, Observation 10, Armor Rating 8 or 4 versus Fire, Acid Splash of 8, sounds bad. Xenomorph XX121AB, Speed of 3, plus Health of 6, Mobility 8, Observation 6, Armor Rating 6, Acid Splash of 6. Then there is the Dracona Strain. Yeah, so you can learn more about those in the cinematic scenarios. Core Burster attacks, yeah, all of those sound bad. Disembowelment, Suffocation, body slams, etc. You can have Xeno versus Xeno combat erupt, so there's some detail about that. If a PC is exposed to the black goo, have them make a stamina roll, the sickness roll, without telling them what it's for. If they fail, they are infected stage 1. When a PC progresses to stage 2, inform them privately. When a PC progresses to stage 3 or 4, they become NPCs under your control. If possible, give the player another PC to play. Oh boy. So they describe the stages of being exposed to the black goo, which is a terminal infection of a life form caused by exposure to certain strains of the black goo chemical agent. They endure an exponentially worse stage of cellular disruption, culminating in complete DNA disintegration. Alright. So yeah, once you get to stage 3, they become freaks with a speed of 2, health of 8, skills mobility 5, observation 3, and armor rating 3. And they have their own list of attacks based on a d6 roll. Stage 4 is terminal. Anyone within a short range of the expiring Noctuous, same zone, without protective gear, must make a sickness roll against virulence 8 to avoid anathema infection. At medium range, the virulence is reduced to 4. Containment and termination protocols. Too late. Hold your breath. Get indoors. Tell your friends to get their incinerators. You're fucked. All right. Nice. Then we have the Frontier War. All right. So this is history of the Frontier War. So I don't want to get too far into this because I'm assuming this will be, yeah, so they want you to involve the PCs. And this is going to be related to, or potentially related to, the missions that make up much of the rest of the book, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, we're starting to get profiles of important NPCs, operations, locations. Yeah, ooh, lots of generic NPC stats. Then we have the key 6 missions, which are all loaded up here. Got some deck plans for things like, this looks like a medical frigate. That's cool. I've heard really good things about this Marine campaign, by the way, that it gets really epic and has a great sort of surprise at the ending. So I'm really excited to run players through this. Of course, I'll start with the 3 cinematic scenarios first, and then propose a longer-term Marine campaign. Soon will be coming out in October, I think, the Building Better Worlds supplement for Alien. So that will be focused on being colonists and trying to build a successful colony in the harsh outer worlds of the frontier. Of course, there are lots of hidden, deadly alien stuff that you'll have to deal with, along with political conflict and all sorts of things. And of course, potentially interference from the Marines if you start doing your own thing or try to join the UPP or who knows what. So I'm very excited for that book as well. Yep, just rapidly scrolling through this to not spoil anything. There are relay stations involved. There's space stations. Yep. Ships, drop ships, various facilities, underground mines. Ooh, almost a bit of a dungeon crawl going here. Oh, this is good. This is really, really exciting. Yep. Okay, no spoilies, no spoilies. Yep. Okay, I've spent almost an hour just on this book, which was not my plan. So this is the Alien Game Mother Screen and Colonial Marines Operations Manual. I was way too excited about this book, so I got into a lot more detail than I expected. I will edit it down somewhat in post, but I hope that it was useful to those of you who are looking to get either the GM screen, which I think is really useful, especially for Marines campaign where combat will be plentiful and frequent. And if you're interested in playing a Marines campaign, this book is amazing. I mean, there's tons of detail in there, loads of character creation options, an insane amount of gear, spacecraft, a full campaign, everything. So if you want to play Marines and have your own version of Aliens, get a hold of this. No doubt about it. All right, so that's it for now. I will come back with my look at the Coriolis stuff. And until then, I hope you all stay well, stay safe as usual, and I shall see you soon in the next video. All right, take care, and bye-bye.